All right. Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the Final Field Letter of Interest Workshop. And I'm Jennifer Luna. And the reason that we have asked y'all to write a Final Field Letter of Interest is because we find that that helps you to prepare better for the job search. And so in the past, we would have our students send their educational learning objectives directly to the agencies with their resume. And we learned that by doing this process of writing a letter of interest, it will help to support your job search. So we really want you to be prepared for the job search as soon as you enter Final Field. So let's go ahead and get started. If you have any questions, just direct message Erin and she will get those over to me. Okay. Oh, I'm having trouble with my handout. Hold on just 1 second, Erin. I'm going to stop sharing for just a moment. All right, can everyone see my screen okay? All right.
Yes.
So the first thing that I want to talk about is the final field process, which you all will be submitting the same resume and the same letter of interest to all 7 different agencies that you apply for. So this makes it a little tricky and it goes against probably everything I think about job search, because I would suggest you tailor your materials, but it makes it a good challenge too. So when we're thinking about writing the letter of interest, you want to make sure that you're, covering the skills that you bring to the table and the learning objectives that you want to learn for all 7 agencies. And I'll give you some tips and tricks on how to make that happen. So the first thing is, as you're thinking about your letter of interest, it's really important to think about your transferable skills, because as you know, you're all getting a social work degree, a master's in social work, and many of y'all are clinical. If you are clinical, and if you're thinking about getting the LCSW, that really has to be first and foremost on your mind as you enter final field. And the reason for that is because once you finish the program, you'll want to get a job that entails treatment, assessment, and diagnosis. And those are the 3 duties on your job description that you will need for clinical supervision. So if you're thinking ahead about getting your LCSW, then you want to be sure to get a field placement that will allow you to participate in treatment, assessment, and diagnosis, which you'll get the skills and the exposure to put on your resume for your job search. So that's the first thing. But I just told about 28 of y'all the same thing, right? So we also want to make sure that you stand out from the rest. And the best way to do that is to utilize your transferable skills. These skills could be skills that you gain from prior work experience, volunteering, life experience. There's many ways to get transferable skills, and they're not necessarily social work skills. So some of the one of the ways that I like to articulate transferable skills is when you're in class, look at your classmates and see, well, what makes me different? What makes me a different type of social worker than the 2 people sitting next to me? And eventually this will become your professional brand as well. So transferable skills are knowledge areas or skills that make you unique and translate nicely into other types of jobs. Some examples of these are online, and please feel free to take a picture of this slide. I believe that this will also be posted on the web as well. But some of the best transferable skills to have would be communication skills. And this could include public speaking, but it goes way beyond that. It could be writing skills, knowing how to do a PowerPoint or a Canva presentation. And for the clinical folks, writing and clinical documentation would also be a great transferable skill to have. So just remember, it goes beyond just speaking and writing, but the other types of communication skills that you have. Also, research, analytical, and grant writing skills are important. Even if you're a clinical student, because of the emphasis on evidence-based practice, to be able to understand a research study would be a great skill to bring to a position. Leadership and supervisory experience. I separate those two because leadership experience is, leadership can be self-leadership, right? It's not necessarily supervising someone or managing someone. So leadership could be being an officer in an organization. It could be leading a committee, coming up with an idea and having a group buy into that idea. It could be advocacy. So that's leadership. And then of course, supervisory experience is when you're overseeing other people. And a lot of us have this supervisory experience from jobs that may not necessarily relate to social work. So for example, if you worked at Target in undergrad, and you managed a small team, or you provided training or onboarding or some performance evaluations, that would be great supervisory experience to have. Next is experience in desktop publishing, newsletter writing, or web page design. These are all kind of more technical skills that you could bring to an organization. And there's a lot of nonprofits that don't have a communications person. So if you can do social networking, blogging, social media, and you enjoy it, don't hesitate to put that on in your cover letter or on your resume. And when I say if you enjoy it, don't put things that you don't want to do on your materials, only things that you do want to do. Mediation skills, conflict resolution, and negotiation are skills that we may not necessarily get trained in, but all of us have these skills. Conflict resolution could be if you worked with children in some form or fashion. There's a lot of conflict resolution that you probably have done before. And negotiation skills, I kind of say the same thing. We negotiate every day. I think that negotiation skills should be one of our core learning criteria in social work, because we negotiate for our clients. And even outside of our jobs, we negotiate. So negotiation could be, if you wear your jacket to school, I'll let you have cereal for breakfast. So try to think about these skills in your everyday life and how you use them. And same thing with project development, coordination, management, and evaluation. I like to highlight these skills with group projects. So everybody has at least one group project in the Steve Hicks School of Social Work program. And you can think about what your role is in that group project. So it could be that you're the leader of the group and you call the meetings and you organize the meetings. You might be the person that coordinates all of the different pieces of writing that goes into the project. You could be the one that manages the file or kind of delegates what other people in the group do. Or maybe you're the person in the end that looks everything over and sends it in. But a lot of folks have these 4 skills. They might not necessarily have been called that in the role that you had, but you gain these skills from them. Next is community outreach, marketing, and public relations. Again, we all use these skills on a day-to-day basis. If you've created flyers for an organization that you're in, or some sort of social media post or outreach, that would be considered these skills. And then volunteer recruitment, coordination, or even if you've been a volunteer, is great to highlight. But I really like to focus on recruitment and coordination, because sometimes it's harder to recruit and coordinate volunteers than it is people who actually work for you, because they're not getting paid. So these are excellent skills to bring with you. So next, I'm going to move to knowledge areas. And knowledge areas can be either practical knowledge or theoretical knowledge. And it's really important to articulate what your knowledge is. You're in graduate school, and you had to have a lot of knowledge before even getting into the program. So think about those practical knowledge areas that you've gained. And I'll tell you that when you're applying for either a field placement or a job, supervisors really like to see good knowledge areas, practical knowledge areas. The reason for this is because it's difficult to teach a lot of these things. So for example, if you have a good sense of complex systems, I think I just, excuse me. Is my PowerPoint still up, Erin?
Yeah, it's still, no, well, you have the
No.
Microsoft Word.
Okay, let me go back to
sample letter.
Presentation. Sorry about that. Okay, so if you have a good sense of how to navigate a complex system, this would definitely be something that you want to highlight on your in your cover letter and on your resume, regardless of whether you're app or clinical. So a complex system could be public assistance programs, SNAP, housing, veterans benefits. If you've dealt with the 504 process in school, if you applied for financial aid, all of these are very complex systems. And usually if you know how to do one, you know how to do them all. Of course, there's going to be different nuances and things like that, but this is a great knowledge area to bring to a job. Also, knowledge of community resources, social service systems, and funding streams would be awesome to be able to navigate. And then there's also a different category of knowledge areas, which is theories or clinical frameworks that you have. These are the knowledge areas that you generally learn in school. So these would be things like solution-focused therapy, brief therapy, motivational interviewing, knowledge of different developmental stages that you probably learned in your first year of the program or in undergrad. So if you're seeking a field placement where you're looking to work in with older adults, you might mention that you have knowledge of narrative therapy and also the stages of grief and loss. Those are really great ways to show that you are ready to apply your knowledge to your final practicum. So I want to just stop for a minute and talk about the resume review guidelines, because we're getting a lot of resume reviews right now. And we are pulling in some help from the Texas Career Engagement Center. You'll send a copy of your resume 24 hours in advance of your appointment. But before you do that, you'll need to watch the resume video and use the Steer Your Career resource library or our Donedo Center website to help you with your materials. We have handouts in there. And when you get an individual resume review, it's really important that your resume and cover letter or letter of interest are up to date, because our appointments are only about 30 minutes long, and we really want to be intentional with that time. So we don't want to spend a lot of time, correcting typos and things like that. We want to help you get the best field placement, so we want to be intentional. For your resume review, we do ask that you have your capabilities on the top of your resume. We won't review your resume without the capabilities. And the reason for that is because the field instructors really like to see what you're going to bring to the table without reading through your whole resume. And then we ask that you focus on population systems and interventions in that capability section, and that you also look at your transferable skills, detailed information about accomplishments. So the number of clients that you saw in a group, the time frame, and the benefits to the clients or organizations for each bullet. So when you think about writing your cover letter or your resume, you might think about, rather than saying something like perform case management at communities and schools with a group of children, you might say something like performed case management for a caseload of 15 children ages 5 to 10, including a group. So you're really packing a lot of punch into those bullets. Try to make the most out of each bullet and each sentence of your letter of interest. We also ask on your resume that you have your experience highlights first, after your capabilities, but that you call it experience highlights, because in social work, we do a lot of experiences that aren't necessarily employment. So if you use the term experience highlights, it's telling the reader that you're just demonstrating the highlights of your experience. It might not be every single job that you've had, and it will also include practicum and other internship or volunteer opportunities in that section. And then after your experience highlight, you'll have your education. And the reason for that is because we know in social work that experience is much more important than education. So that's why we ask you to put your capabilities and your experience highlights and then your education. Also, when you begin looking for a job, you'll be competing with other social workers that may have graduated last year or the year before. We want to make you as competitive as possible. So we find that if you have your education as the first thing on your resume, you will look like a recent grad. And then I'm going to skip to the next one. The format for your resume review will be to use bullet points, no first person, no pronouns, and no paragraphs. You can use pronouns under your name for your title, but by pronouns in your resume, we don't want to see something like, conducted intake with children and helped them with their social skills. So no pronouns in that way. We find that it's best to use Times New Roman or Calibri, font no smaller than 11, and your margins would be between 0.5 and 1 inch. We also ask for your last name and page number to be on the second page only. Don't put your header on the second page, because if the supervisor or employer prints it out, they may get the first page and the second page mixed up. And then finally, don't use more than 3 styles on your header. So, caps, bold, and underline is enough. I wouldn't use like caps, bold, underline, and italics. Okay, I'm gonna stop share just for a second. Are there any questions coming in so far?
Yes, so let me just pull up the chat.
Actually, I am going to share.
So the first question was, for students who are applying for PhD program for fall 2024, would we, oh, sorry, as soon as you, I like when, okay, would we include in, would we include that in our letter of interest? And if so, how?
I probably would not include that in the letter of interest. Only because this is for fields, or I'm sorry, practicum, final practicum. Um, and I think that's kind of a case by case basis. It might depend on which field placement that you're entering. If it's a macro practicum in which you would be doing research, that might make a difference. But my broad answer would be I probably would not include that.
The other questions I could probably answer. One is, what should we do if there are no more resume review appointment spots left? Thank you. So we are adding, well, we have two group sessions next week, which those should be available on Steer. I think there's 12 spots per group session. We're also going to be adding some more resume clinics through the Texas Center of Engagement. So we'll keep you all abreast on that. And then the other question was, signed up for cover letter review appointment through Steer. Is that different from a letter of interest review appointment? No, it's the same. It's just a
If it's
different,
for practicum, it's the same.
yeah.
For practicum, we're calling it a letter of interest.
Hmm. The next question. I was told by my sister-in-law, who is a resume coach, that a resume shouldn't be longer than 1 page if we haven't been in our field for more than 10 years. Mine is only 1 page for this reason, but it will be disadvantageous to have it be only 1 page, question mark.
I believe so. I've been a social work career coach for a really long time. And as I mentioned earlier, in social work, experience is much more important than education. And they want to see what experience you bring to the table. So I often find that when people try to limit it to 1 page, that they sell themselves short. If you only have 1 page, that's fine. But if you have more experiences, then I would go to 2 pages, but no more than that.
And that was the last of the questions.
Okay, let's dive into the learning, I mean, the letter of interest. So the point of the letter of interest is to talk about the experience that you have and kind of where you see yourself going. And it's a place to put your educational learning objectives. So for your educational learning objectives, you want to determine what your needs are related to the skills that you want to gain from your practicum. So this is the only opportunity probably that you'll get to apply for a job and send in a letter and say, this is what I want to get out of this job. So keep that, in your mind that this is what I want to get from this job. Ask yourself, what is my career goal once graduating? So is my career goal to get an LCSW? Is it to go into a PhD program? Do I want to work in policy? So really think deeply about what you want to do. And I would think more about the skill than the population at this point. And then for each learning objective, you want to ask yourself, how will my field instructor know that I achieved this objective? So if you have something that's kind of ambiguous or broad, and it comes down to evaluation time, you're going to have to show how you met that objective. And it's just like writing a treatment plan. Make sure that you know how you can show or demonstrate that you've achieved those goals. I'm also going to suggest that you use broad behavioral terms rather, and this is because of the fact that you send the same letter to 7 different practicum sites. So for example, the opportunity to gain experience with documentation. Now, that is a great objective to have because you're saying that you want to actually experience doing documentation, not learning about it, but doing it. But say, for example, you are applying to 4 hospitals and 3 other settings. So this is a great opportunity to use this particular term, including but not limited to electronic medical records. So what you're saying at this point is that you want the opportunity to do documentation. You really want to learn the electronic medical records, but it's not limited to that. Another example would be the next one, the opportunity to work with clients in the recovery process, including but not limited to opioid addiction. So that's your catchphrase for applying the same letter to 7 agencies. So I'm going to give you a few examples of the learning objectives, and then I'm going to show you a sample letter. And please don't use these. These are very broad. I would suggest that you use the competencies that are on your syllabi. Every syllabi has competencies that you'll gain, and I would suggest that you use that language. But these are some examples that I will demonstrate what the objectives should look like. So increase competency in the assessment of child, family, and environment. Increase ability to integrate assessment findings, theory, and academic literature into treatment planning and treatment initiatives. If you have something like academic literature, then I would be really specific about what article or book that you're going to use to integrate into the treatment planning. And then increase competency in the practice of individual, group, and family therapy. And then for the app concentration, some examples might be to become familiar with aspects of budgeting and allocation of funds and various components of human services organizations. So that means it could be a big budget or a small budget, or a nonprofit budget or a state budget. And then to develop my professional and interpersonal skills as an agency representative or community agent. Now, this last one I have in yellow because I think this is a fantastic objective for any student who is thinking on staying in Austin. And that is to attend and participate in agency staff meetings, board meetings, and any other opportunities for professional development. And let me retract what I just said. It wouldn't necessarily be staying in Austin. This is going to get you out of the office and get you in opportunities to participate in professional development. So if you're thinking about staying local, you might use that to go to a local NASW meeting or the school social work conference. But also this would allow you to maybe take the practice, use some of your field placement time to take the practice exam. Or maybe you could use some of this time to come to a career fair at the Doneto Center. So this is a really, I would suggest everybody put something like this in their field placement. I'm sorry, in their cover letter. So does everybody remember when you started either your BSW placement or your first year field placement, you had a learning contract that looked something like this. And I think they're still using this exact same form. But this is really what the learning objectives are. So you, in your first year, you gave an objective that you wanted to learn, or a goal, and you listed out what tasks you would do. And then the field instructor writes how they're going to support you in that. And that's pretty much the same thing as the learning objectives in your cover letter. So now I'm going to show you, actually, I'm going to stop for a second and see if anybody has questions.
Um, it's one of the questions is how far back should we go in our work experience?
I probably about 10 years, but if you have the beauty of using experience highlights is that if you have a position that did pertain to the practicum or the job you're applying for, you may go back a little bit longer. So for example, some people may be returning to work and they might, have had a career before they maybe stayed home and took care of family, and then they went to grad school and now they're applying for their practicum, then you could go back further in those incidences.
The next question is, are most of our interviews for placement going to be via Zoom or in person? I know it may differ, but any insight on this would be helpful. Thank you.
I don't know. I'm sorry, that would probably be a question for the field office. I would think that if the field placement is in person, that the interview would be in person.
And should we include all competencies in our learning objectives?
No, so your learning objectives, you'll only have probably no more than 7, between 5 and 7.
Okay, that was all the questions.
All right.
Oh, wait, just got just got another one. Should we include
Okay.
relevant coursework or just the skills we learned from those courses on our resume?
For the field, I'm sorry, the practicum process, I would probably, if you have like a really specific course that applies, I think you can include that even in your capability section. But for the job search, I wouldn't, because again, it's going to make you look like a current student or a recent graduate. So I would rather talk about the knowledge that you gained as opposed to the course. Alrighty. So here we have a sample letter of interest, and this is going to be on our website. So you'll be able to download a copy of it. It's got your same header as your resume, and you'll list the date and address it to Steve Hicks School of Social Work Field Supervisor. And the first paragraph covers your interest in applying for an internship, where you are in the program, what concentration you're in. So we've got that right there. And your interest in the population or the types of services that you're interested in working in. I'm sorry, that you bring to the table, not that you're interested in working in. Then, so if you don't have any experience coming from undergrad, you could use your field placement. If not, even if you've worked in a different setting that's not a social work setting, but maybe similar, you could use that setting in this section. The next sentence is telling them what you plan to do after you finish. So this one specifically says seeking LCSW after graduation. And to this end, I'm interested in gaining experience working directly with adults and groups in a clinical setting. You could also add in this first paragraph, if you're LCSW bound, that you're seeking to gain experience that would support your clinical supervision. Next, you'll talk about your previous experience or field placement. I'd probably at least mention your previous field placement, because a lot of field supervisors are interested in that. So that would be the next couple of sentences talking about the skills that you gained in that field placement or that job. So you'll notice that this talks about the skills such as screening, intake, and case management with children, and then the knowledge areas, which is complex systems such as SNAP, Medicare, Medicaid. If you're clinical or app, And in your first field placement, you gain some knowledge areas that are really pertain to your concentration or like theories. Then you can also mention those theories that you gained experience with. So maybe you utilized play therapy or crisis intervention, or you did logic models in your first experience. You can include that in this paragraph as well. So next, you'll have a sentence that says, to support my career goals, these are the educational learning objectives that I'm seeking. And these examples are different than the ones that I gave you. But again, I ask not that you don't copy them directly. Because, and the reason I like to say this is because a lot of the supervisors that you're going to be applying with, most of them are alumni of our program. And most of them have been through the same workshop or through my resume workshop. And so if you go a different direction, or if you use the same examples, they may catch on to that. We also have examples of the app concentration. These are much better examples than the one I said before. Again, you can get these samples on our website. And then you just close by thanking them and asking for the opportunity to interview. If this was a cover letter, of course, I would tailor this a little bit more. If all of your field practicum options are in one particular area, like say all 7 of them are in healthcare, then you might tailor it by saying, I'm excited about the possibility of learning about healthcare social work. So you can change this last sentence up a little bit if you want to. And then you'll sign with your name, the program that you're in, and Steve Hicks School of Social Work. So we'll stop share there.
We have a few questions. Let's see. Yes. So is it important to highlight our first field placement over other experience we've had, or is it dependent on on what was most relevant to our future goals?
It depends on what's most relevant to your future goals, because I do know that there's a lot of y'all that have previous experience that may have even been deeper than your field placement. But you definitely want to mention what your placement was, but you can absolutely emphasize your work experience if you feel that that is going to meet your goals.
And should a letter of interest be 1 page?
Yes.
Should that top section follow that exact phrasing, just replacing with our specific details? Is that what the internships are expecting, or can we change the language to write in our own voice?
You can change the language to write in your own voice, definitely, but it just has to include, what concentration that you're in, what you're seeking, but you can definitely use your own voice.
Where will this example be posted after this session?
It's already on the Donito Center. It's in resources, so I can demonstrate that.
Yeah, I can drop it in the chat.
Okay, that would be awesome.
The next question is, are there templates for resume and letter of, yes, so templates for resume and letter of interest are also available in that same place. So I'm just going to share that with you all as soon as I find it. And then how do we sign up for the resume review group appointment since there's no individual ones left? Those will have to, we just added them yesterday afternoon, so you might just have to double check again.
Luke just dropped something in
Oh, yes. Okay. So
Luke.
yeah, thank you. Yeah, it's in a slightly different place. Yeah, Luke just came over and showed us how to create these. So yeah, if you go to events and workshops on Steer, you should be able to find them. Thank you so much, Luke, for mentioning that. And that is all of the questions.
All right. Well, thank you all so much for coming to the workshop today. And I'll wish you the very best of luck on your field placement. And as Erin said, we are getting help from Texas Career Engagement Center. Erin has become well versed in these letters and resumes as well. And so I think that y'all will be taken care of for this round.
Yeah,
Thank you.
just shared it in the chat, so make sure to copy and paste it before we close out.
I think we can stop recording.